Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now a while back I did a restoration on a vintage Star Wars Slave 1 and that went really well. I took an old battered Slave 1 and brought it back to as good as box fresh sort of condition, taking all the parts off it, stripping it down, cleaning it up, repairing any bits that were broken and putting a fresh set of stickers on, and it looked really nice. And since then I've been given another Slave 1 which is in similar to slightly worse condition. As you can see here, this is the Slave 1 I've got. It's got most of its bits. The only thing I haven't managed to find for it so far is a rear ramp, but I have all the other parts for it. And the other thing I don't have is the cockpit. As you can see, this is the cockpit that should be on it, but it's broken. This was the one I actually broke while doing the last restoration. The cockpit I have on there is from a Power of the Force 2 version, so it's made out of a clearer plastic. So I thought, as it wasn't a sort of a complete Slave 1, I would try and do a bit of a customization job on this one. So my plan for this one is to take it all apart, strip it down, clean it up, mend any of the broken bits, and then add some lights to it, because it's a toy that really has a lot of spare capacity inside it that you can add quite a few bits and bobs, and I think adding lights to this will really improve it. If we quickly take a look at this Slave 1, let me move a few bits and bobs out of the way. The inside of the ship is pretty empty. There's a lot of space in there, and I was thinking that we could add a little light above the sort of cockpit section where Boba Fett sits, maybe another one inside the cargo hold up here to light the cargo hold, so when you flatten Boba Fett's little cockpit sort of bed back down, you'll be able to see him. And also if we turn the ship over, the engines on the back of it really do look like they just need some lights added in there. So I thought it would be quite a fun thing to do that. And then once we've added all the lights, I'm going to make some custom stickers for this that make it look more screen accurate. The stickers that came on the original Slave 1 were very primitive, just flat colours, and I think we can do a lot better job of that, adding little bits more detail here and there. And also I want to add some battle damage to it, so much like the original Kenner X-Wing had battle damage on it, I want to add similar stuff to this, and I think that will improve it a lot and make it look like a much more sort of weathered and beaten ship, which I think really is what Slave 1 is all about. Normally when I start a project like this I tend to try and find some other toy or little gadget that has lights and switches in it that I can just use, take apart and sort of modify to fit in the toy that I want it to go in finally. But this time I thought, as other people may want to have a go at this, I'll do it using kit pieces that you can easily buy. So if you go onto eBay you can quite happily buy a sort of RC light kit. These are LEDs that people use to add to remote control cars. Now a kit like this costs $3.99, and what you get, if you just open up the little bag here, you can see everything that we get. So you get 4 LEDs, 2 of these are white and 2 of them are red, and these are already soldered onto wires with the correct resistors added at the top and the wires cut at the end. You get a little PP3 battery connector, so you can easily connect the lights to a battery. You get a little switch like so, that's very useful, and you get the LED holders, which will be ideal for fitting the LEDs inside of Slave 1. So with a kit like this you don't really need that much experience of wiring. If you've got a soldering iron, obviously you can solder these bits together and wire it up properly, but if you don't, you can also get away with not needing to have a soldering iron. You can buy this sort of block terminal stuff. Again, this I picked up off eBay. This costs 99p for all these pieces, and what you end up doing is putting the wires in the holes and screwing the screws down to hold them in place, and you can connect all the wires together using these, and you don't need to have a soldering iron. So let's start off by working out how we want to wire up this circuit, and then we can see about where we can fit it within the Slave 1 body shell. So here we have the basic setup. As you can see, I've just used 2 little bits of the little connecting terminal block there, and basically we've connected the red wire from the plug to the red wires of the LEDs and the black wire to the black wires. So it's really very simple. And now we can just test that this works by plugging, if I get the LEDs on the screen, if I plug this into a battery, you'll see that they all light up. So you can see we have 2 white ones in the middle there and 2 red ones. So the idea is that the red ones will go where the engine blocks are, and the white ones, one of them will go above the cockpit, and I think one is going to go inside the cargo hold of the Slave 1 ship. So really, now that we've proved that this works, we can sort of work out a better way of fitting it inside the ship. Obviously I want to add the switch in. Adding the switch in is fairly easy, because basically we just got to put the switch along one of these wires. So if we say the red wire, oops, that's just come undone there. If we just say along the red wire, we can put the switch in along there, and then when it switches it will break that connection and the lights will go off. So let's have a look at how we can fit these in the ship. I'm hoping each of these LEDs comes with 20 centimeters of wire on it. I'm hoping that will be long enough. It may be we need to add a little bit more to some of them to fit all the way around sort of inside the Slave 1, but it should all work near enough, I would say. Taking Slave 1 apart is a pretty easy job. It's one of the easier ships to dismantle. There's a few screws on the bottom which removes this whole bottom panel, and then you just have a whole load of screws along the edge which splits the body in half. For this initial phase I'm just going to worry about how we fit the two lights in this bottom panel, so I'll take the bottom panel off, we'll work on that bit, and then we'll work on the rest of the body as a second pass. So let's unscrew all of these and we can get the bottom panel off. Here's the bottom panel off of that Slave 1. As you can see, it's just two bits of plastic with the main sort of bottom section, the green bit of plastic inside, and then this holds in the clip. This is the clip that holds the wings in place. Now, the first thing you've got to do is actually remove this green bit of plastic, which can be tricky. It's held on with two little plastic pegs at the top. Sometimes they just ping off, other times they take a little bit more effort. That removes this whole section and the little wing clip thing. This is one I've previously repaired. As you can see, this bit of plastic was missing and I've replaced it with a bit of credit card which does just the same job as the plastic that was there originally. So really we just need to look at this section, because I think my plan is we're going to have to drill a couple of holes here to mount the LEDs in for the engine, and ideally I want to mount the switch somewhere in the handle, because at the moment you hold the handle on the back of the Slave 1, you have the little trigger up here, and I was thinking if I put a switch down the bottom it'll all be hidden away, you won't actually be able to see it, but there'll be a switch here. So we need to work out some way of mounting that into this bit of plastic here. I would say rather than luck by design, the little switch that came in this pack that I bought actually fits between the two bits of plastic that are here on the handle. You can see that I can just slot it in, and it actually fits in pretty nicely. It's slightly raised up because the legs that the wires need to be soldered onto are slightly too long, but I think we can bend those down and then that little switch will just fit perfectly in there. And you probably won't even notice it from the outside, and then it will be a case of you can press the normal trigger button at the top and you can use your lower finger to switch the engine lights and internal lights on. So I think that's actually going to be quite a nice position to put it and not too sort of intrusive. So next thing we've got to do really is actually fit the LEDs. Now the LEDs in this pack come with little holders which are perfect, because basically all you have to do is we'll drill a hole in here and these will clip in place. So you need to drill a 6mm hole through this plastic and then these will clip in and you can just pop the LEDs through from the other side. I think I'm actually going to paint these red because I think black again is a little bit too sort of dark, and the original sticker that was on this engine block is just a red sticker, so I think painting that red will look quite nice. So there we have the two holes. I'm not going to push this little clip through completely at the moment because I am going to paint that red. I think it will look a lot nicer red, but as you can see a 6mm hole is perfect for this. It's going to fit quite nicely. So let's get these painted. I'm just going to paint them with some red Humbrol acrylic paint and then we can plop them into place and we'll put the LEDs through and see what it looks like with those in place. As I said, I'm just going to be using red Humbrol paint. This is RC43 red. It's the only red I actually have in my toolbox, but there are others around, but I think this should do. It's you know, it's quite red and engine-y looking. All I've got to do is really just give this a quick little paint just so that it doesn't look black. I think the black is just too harsh on the underside near the engine. I think this will look a lot nicer. Now that the paint has dried, we can just slot those in place. They should just clip through the holes that I've already cut, so we can just drop those in. I've already put one in the other side, so let's just push that one through. As you can see, they fit quite nicely. So now we can drop the LEDs in. Here we have the red LEDs, and these just push through and they should clip in place. It might be that you need a screwdriver, a small screwdriver, just to push those down, and they will clip actually into place there. Oops, I managed to push the main bit out of that, so let's do that again. Just put my finger on the other side and we should be able to push that into place like so. There we go, and now the LED is clipped in place, so we'll do the other one as well. Now those first two LEDs are in place, I thought it'd be fun to check to see how it looks. I've just connected the wire using the little junction box there and attached the battery, and we can see, there we go, you can see that they're glowing quite nicely. That's quite a good effect actually, it's quite a sort of convincing effect. I think maybe if we'd had some sort of diffuser over the top of it, it would look even better, so I might see if we can do something about that, but you get quite a nice glowing effect off that. So let's move on to fitting some of the internal lights. So here we have the side section of the Slave one. This is the section with the door in it. You can see there's a larger gap. And I think I'm going to try and fit everything on this side, because my plan is for the battery to sit just on the sort of top of the green surface that's inside. I'm going to sort of work out a way of maybe velcroing this in place. So I really want all the wiring to end up on this side of the ship. So I want one light on this top section here. Now I think the easiest way to do that is again just to drill a hole through. Obviously the ship is split down the middle. I'm going to actually offset the light and fit it onto one side. I think if I drill a hole on this side, I can then mount the LED through like that, and we can trail the wire down. If I drill another small hole there, we can trail the wire down this side section, and then it will end up coming out sort of again quite near the battery, which should be quite good. The other light I want to fit up into the cockpit section. So you can see here that the glass canopy goes along this way, and this little bit here is right above Boba Fett's head. So I think really what I want to do is I'm going to fit an LED in just about here, which is quite useful because there's just a tiny gap where the screw hole is that I think I can just about squeeze this LED around without having to make too much modifications to the ship. So this one won't need the little housing, it'll just sort of sit in there. I might have to just glue that in place, and again then all the wiring can come down and is sort of out of the way of all the mechanisms, and again is heading towards the battery. I'm hoping all these wires will just about be long enough. It might be that I have to extend a couple of them, but if I can get all of these lights fitted, then we'll see whereabouts these wires end up. And then obviously I've got to take the wires off to the switch and the handle. So we'll go about, let's drill a hole in here for mounting the light, and then we can drill another little hole and get the cable fixed down. And I think I'm just going to have to slightly chop away this so that this little bit fits there. And then we can thread this through, and it needs to go back through that tiny little hole that I've drilled next to it as well. So that's got to go through there, like so, and then we've got to thread it back through that little hole on the side. Like so. And then this whole thing can clip in place, and it's sort of hidden away inside the structure of Slave 1. It should, oops, if I get this all right, it should just fit in there quite nicely and all be held in place. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then these cables can be hidden on the inside, and you won't see them once the ship is all together. This last LED I just want to sit behind this section here, so I think I really am just going to chop away part of the screw hole, and then I think that will just fit quite nicely. It's just got to go slightly in front of that, and it will again be hidden by everything, and the screw will hold it in place. So I'm just going to use maybe just a knife should be able to cut that out, but I might have to do that off camera because it's a really awkward shape to do. In the end I just used a small needle file to slightly file away these sort of screw housing there. As you can see, that LED now fits quite nicely. It's quite sort of hidden away, so by the time you've got the cockpit on, it should cast quite a nice little light down, and you won't be able to see it. And again, now that I've put the two sides together just temporarily, you can see there's the light inside, so it's quite well hidden, but it should cast quite a nice little light on the sort of cargo hold there. So I thought again it'd be nice to just test these. I've just quickly wired them up using the little junction box again. So if I touch the battery to this, let's touch it the right way around, of course, you can see they light up. So the cockpit now has quite a nice bright light in it, and I think that should be enough to light Boba Fett, and the one inside as well is quite good. I think that's, again, once we've got the whole ship back together, and I don't have my desk lamp on, actually my desk lamp's pretty bright, it should light them up quite nicely. So I think that's going to work really effectively. So now we've just got to sort out the final bit of wiring and where we're going to fit the switch. this is how it stands so far then. So we've got two LEDs for the engines, we've got one LED up in the cargo hold and one up behind the cockpit section. And what we're going to do is we want to switch down here in the handle, and I'm going to, well, I really want to end up with the battery connector somewhere on this side so that you can easily plug the battery in, and then I'm going to attach some Velcro somewhere, and you can then Velcro the battery back in place and it will just hold still. So what we've got to do is we've got to get all of these wires to come together somewhere down at this point, with one of the wires going off to the battery and the other one snaking back to the switch and then back again to where all of these wires join together. So it's not actually that complicated. It's just a simple bit of wiring. You can do it with these junction boxes. I'm actually going to solder it because I want to solder the wires onto this switch. So let's sort of get everything sorted and together, and we can do a bit of soldering, and then we can glue this switch in place and check that the whole thing works. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the switch is actually sitting a little bit too raised up because of the legs of the switch itself. So really what I'm going to do now, I've soldered the wires on, I'm going to bend these legs slightly either way. I don't want them to touch ever because obviously that will create a complete circuit. You want this switch to work. So I'm going to bend one leg one way, just using a pair of small pliers, and I'm going to bend the other leg the other way, and hopefully that should be enough that now if I slot this in place, it should, I want it to lie flat really. I'll see how much I have to bend it. Oh, you see, that's much better. It now lies flat. If we look from the side, you can see it's actually quite flush with the handle. So I think that's good enough. I maybe need to bend it slightly more. It actually doesn't even need gluing in place. It's gone in quite firmly, so that's pretty good. We're now in a situation that we can put everything back together, and I was going to solder everything, but I'm actually going to use the junction box that I showed you at the start, so that it's the sort of thing that anybody can do. So basically all the red wires from the LEDs need to go in one side of this, all the black wires from the LEDs need to go in the other, and likewise we need the black wire from the little plug to go in one side, and then we need the red wire that I've attached to the switch to go in the other side, so that that's the switching cable, and then all of it should work and we can start trying to tidy everything up and put this ship back together. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's all wired up. It currently looks a little bit of a mess on the inside, but it does all work. The last thing I want to do before sort of putting the ship back together and testing it fully is the little junction box is a little bit sort of loose there. So I've got some of these craft foam pads, and I'm just going to stick a couple of those to the back of it, and then I can stick it to the bottom of the ship and start tidying up these wires and putting them out of the way. And I'm going to use a bit of tape just to tape the other ones to the sides of the ship so that they don't get in the way at all. As you can see, it's now starting to come together. Everything is sort of holding in place quite well. It's fairly fiddly to get all of this stuff in. Now that I've added the wiring, the wires sort of don't allow you to move the ship apart as you would have done when it was originally built. So it takes a little bit of fiddling, but it is working. So I'm going to persevere and get the whole thing back together. You can see the wires are quite sort of neatly out of the way. There's just one wire coming down there and one there, and then obviously you've got the power lead here. So I think it should all fit in still. Just going to carry on fiddling, getting everything sorted in place, and put a little bit more tape to hold the wires down, and then we can get the whole ship back together. And here we have Slave 1 all back together. As you can see from the outside, it doesn't look much difference. If you rotate it over onto the back, you can see obviously that there's a couple of LEDs on the back, but the rest of it looks pretty normal. I've yet to attach the battery inside. I think I'm going to leave that till part 2 of this project, but it's just sort of loose about it inside at the moment. I have got an idea how to fix that in, but for the moment I'm going to leave that. So yeah, join me in part 2 when I finish off this customization and add all of the other bits of decals and stickers and all sorts. But let's take a look at the lights to start with. So if I turn this ship over, you'll see On the back here, there's a tiny little switch. If I switch that on, the engine lights come on. If I switch my desk light off, you'll see those a bit better. It's quite a nice sort of subtle effect there, just a little bit of a glow. But for the full effect, really, you want to have a look at the cockpit. And here we go. There's the cockpit with the light in it. I've yet to clean up this cockpit glass. You can see it's pretty scratched and beaten. And this is a Power of the Force 2 glass, so it's clear. I would like to try and find an original cockpit glass, the sort of tinted one, because I think that might look a bit nicer. But you can see it does light up really well, and Boba Fett is quite nicely lit inside there. Then, of course, we have one final light, which is the cargo hold light. So if I take off this side panel, you'll see that the inside of the ship is now lit, and if I rotate Boba Fett down, he's quite nicely sort of lit up there, which is pretty good. So that light works pretty nicely as well. I'm really pleased with how this has gone. The kit is, as I say, something that you can buy off eBay for £4, so it's not a huge amount of money. It's designed for remote control cars, but as you can see, you can actually put it in anything. So that's the first part of this customization. Join me in part 2 and we'll finish off and get this ship looking really quite smart. This is still a pretty rough state. It's looking better than it did, but still needs a little bit more work. So I hope that's been of interest for you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.